Alsop ton gives Hampshire upper hand at Edgbaston. Warwickshire began the round propping up the division, having lost their opening game convincingly. They looked to bounce back with a win against a Hampshire side that won the South Group of the Royal London One Day Cup with room to spare. Hampshire got off to a flyer after opting to bat, with Weatherly finding the boundary from the first ball of the day, before the Warwickshire bowlers fought back with 3 successive maidens. And Hannon Dolby made the breakthrough when he beat Weatherly's inside edge to trap him LBW, as the Warwickshire bowler conceded just 1 run in his first 5 overs. And Warwickshire captain Jitan Patel brought himself into the attack and struck with just his second ball when Soames feathered through to Ambrose. North East and Alsop looked to rebuild, with Alsop finding the boundary twice from a Brooks over. And their partnership was worth 48 when lunch arrived. The 50 stand was brought up soon after the interval when Alsop found the cover boundary off Hannon Dolby. And Alsop reached his own 50 in style, driving Patel back over his head for his 9th 4. Just as things were beginning to look ominous for Warwickshire, Hannon Dolby hit back with the wicket of North East as he got one to straighten and trap the Hampshire skipper in front. Rousseau fell soon after for a 9-ball duck when he tried to lift Patel over mid-off, but failed to beat the man in the deep. The onus was now on Tom Alsop to bat his team into a strong position. And the game looked finely balanced at the tea interval, with the visitors 165 for 4, but crucially with Alsop just 13 runs from his century. Hannon Dolby continued his excellent day when Dawson drove him to point soon after the break. That brought an Aaron Donald to the wicket, and he immediately set about the bowling like he was still playing one-day cricket, smashing 4 boundaries from 1 miles over to move to 32 from 22 balls. And in the next over, Alsop reached his century with a 1-bounce 4 over mid-off off the bowling of Patel, before Donald clubbed 3 boundaries in a row off Patel to move within touching distance of a rapid 50. A 6 and a 4 in an over off both Brooks and Hannon Dolby took Donald to 75 off just 56 balls. But he fell after 1 expansive shot too many when he steered Hannon Dolby to Banks in the gully to bring the fun to an end. Alsop was able to survive until the close with 131 to his name, a superb innings by the Hampshire keeper, but the Warwickshire bowlers led by Oliver Hannon Dolby stuck to their task well to make sure they remained in the game. Sibley approaches historic century, but it's otherwise a bowler's day as Warwickshire fear the follow-on. A superb century from Tom Alsop put Hampshire in the box seat at Edgbaston on day 1, but miserly bowling from Oliver Hannon Dolby meant Warwickshire was still in the hunt going into day 2. But it was a confident start from the visitors, with Berg and Alsop picking up where they'd left off with a series of boundaries. Warwickshire needed leaders to step up, and that's exactly what Captain Patel did as he caught and bowled the dangerous Berg for 26. Alsop batted himself to 150 as Hampshire tried to steady the ship, but his impressive innings ended as he mishit Patel into the grateful palms of Chris Miles. It was left to the tail end to add to Hampshire's total, but they made just 18 more runs between them as Abbott gave Patel his fifer, and Barker completed the Warwickshire captain's 6-wicket haul after contributing just 13 runs. A good morning for Alsop, but a great morning for Patel, and the guests were all out for 354. Warwickshire made steady progress in their 6 overs before lunch, with Dom Sibley unbeaten on 11 and Will Rhodes 6 not out. That rock-solid form seemed to be continuing after the break, but skillful bowling from Kyle Abbott gave Hampshire the breakthrough, squaring up Rhodes, who edged to slip. Young Rob Yates came to the crease for a debut county championship innings. That didn't last long, the 19-year-old staying just 45 balls before being bowled by a crafty Liam Dawson. A sedate spell followed, where the game was ready for either team to take control, Sibley and Hose steadily building Warwickshire's score against some tidy Hampshire bowling. It was to be Hampshire who took the momentum going into tea, with Hose clean bowled by a fine Fidel Edwards Yorker. The Bears were 88 for 3 after the afternoon session. It fell on the shoulders of Sibley to rebuild the Warwickshire innings, and the opener advanced from his pre-T50 with some fine shots over the rope. The duo took opportunities where they could, Banks launching Dawson for 6 after 5 frustrating dot balls. Banks managed to eke out one more 4, but Abbott took his wicket, breaking a useful partnership of 48. With his tail up, Abbott came back an over later and took 2 wickets in 2 balls, trapping both LBW, first Thompson gone for 9, and then Ambrose for a golden duck. Sibley, however, kept the score ticking over, moving smartly between the wickets and punishing loose balls when they came. But around him, Warwickshire were falling apart. The bowling of Fidel Edwards too quick for Miles. He was caught by Soames at short leg. Sibley was on strike for the final over of the day, needing 6 to make a 600 in 6 successive first-class matches. But he settled for a single as Warwickshire finished the day on 184 for 7 and fearing the worst going into day 3. Sibley reaches historic ton before Hampshire pile on the runs. Dom Sibley only needed a further 5 runs on day 3 to reach an historic 600 in consecutive first-class games, but the rest of the Warwickshire batsmen fell around him on day 2 to leave them work to do to avoid the follow-on. Sibley and Brooks began sedately in their attempt to reach the follow-on target, and slow and steady looked to be winning the race until Dawson held on to a Brooks drive off the bowling of Weatherly. But Sibley was able to clip Weatherly to mid-wicket to bring up his historic century, the first Warwickshire batsman to score 100 in 6 consecutive matches, a magnificent achievement. And Warwickshire were able to avoid the follow-on as Jitan Patel played a cameo role in support of Sibley. Patel fell, however, after wafting at a ball from Berg, with Alsop taking the catch. And soon after, Hannon Dorby perished in slightly comical fashion, bowled by Berg to wrap up the innings. A great effort by Sibley to carry his bat, but his side trailed by 121 on first innings. Weatherly got off to a quick start as Hampshire looked to set an imposing target, picking up 3 early boundaries off Brooks. And he showed no sign of slowing down as he and partner Soames brought up 50, a better than 5 and over, before the lunch interval arrived. Hampshire would have hoped they could continue at the same rate of knots in the afternoon session and set up a declaration in the evening. Soames picked up where he'd left off before the interval, sending Hannon Dorby to the rope 3 times in an over. And then picking up a 6 and a 4 from the next over off Patel to bring up his 50 from just 46 balls. Soames was motoring and Hampshire moved swiftly past 100, but one big shot too many proved his downfall as he picked out Patel at mid-wicket off Miles. And Weatherly fell soon after, 4 runs short of his own half-century as he was strangled down the leg side by Henry Brooks. Alsop was then bowled round his legs attempting to sweep Patel. Hampshire had committed to their fast scoring rate though, and they pressed on with Russo taking the lead with back-to-back 4s off Brooks, followed by a brutal maximum off Thompson for the big South African. Russo looked like he was still playing one-day cricket as he picked up boundaries at will, and he reached his 50 from just 29 balls with another 6, this time crashed over mid-on. It didn't take Russo long to hit his straps after the interval with a 6 and a 4 from Patel's first over after the resumption. And it turned into an impressive over as North East picked up back-to-back boundaries of his own. When Russo dispatched Hannon Dorby for 6 from the first ball of the next over, 27 had been scored from the last 7 balls. But the South African lived by the sword and died by the sword as he failed to clear deep mid-wicket and picked out Brooks. Dawson fell 3 balls later, plumb LBW to Patel. Amid the carnage, North East was able to bring up his 50 and then decided enough was enough, declaring and setting Warwickshire an imposing 424 to win. After carrying his bat in the first innings, Sibley had been on the field for the entire game, and that exertion may have taken its toll as he pushed at a ball from Abbott that moved late and edged behind to Alsop. The Warwickshire batsman understandably dropped anchor in the hope of surviving unscathed until tomorrow, but Rhodes perished after taking a swipe at Dawson and picking out Russo. That left Warwickshire 42 for 2 and still 382 behind at the close, and hoping for some help from the weather on day 4 to escape with a draw. Warwickshire collapse on final day to give Hampshire mammoth win. Dom Sibley completed his landmark century early on day 3 at Edgbaston, but after that it was all Hampshire as they piled up the runs in brutal fashion before 2 late wickets left them scenting victory on the final day. The overnight Warwickshire rain dances looked to have done the trick as the start was delayed by an hour, but when play did begin it took Hampshire just 2 balls to make the breakthrough as Fidel cleaned up debutant Yates. And only 1 run had been added before the stumps were flying again, this time courtesy of Abbott bowling hose. A pattern was beginning to form, as in the very next over, night watchman Miles had his stumps rearranged by Edwards to leave Warwickshire teetering on 43 for 5, with the 424 they needed to win not looking in any danger. But with lunch approaching, Banks fell to Dawson, with Edwards taking the catch this time, to bring about the interval with Warwickshire in all sorts of trouble. They'd added just 6 runs when their former all-rounder Barker angled one in to pin Thompson LBW. And in the next over, Ambrose was bowled by Berg. Warwickshire were unravelling, and Barker made it 3 wickets in 3 overs without the addition of a run when he took out Brooks's off-stump. That left Patel and last man Hannon Dalby to survive until the rain came to save them, and they made a decent fist of it as they resisted for the best part of an hour and added 34 runs. But they couldn't prevent the inevitable, and Patel eventually perished when he edged behind off Edwards to give Hampshire a very impressive win by 314 runs. Hampshire claim a welcome 23 points, while Warwickshire have to make do with just 4.